Hello and welcome back to our reading circle of Suzuki Roshi's Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. We're now up to page 55, Repetition, the chapter on repetition. Very short chapter this time. The subject Suzuki Roshi is really looking at here, it has not only to do with repetition, but has to do with the ideal, with idealism. And this idea that spiritual practice often is orientated towards some kind of ideal state. And he starts off the chapter looking at the asceticism that Shakyamuni Buddha was practicing before he sat under the Bodhi tree and achieved his enlightenment and realized his great awakening. And this asceticism was the pursuit of an ideal at the expense of the body, starving oneself, going through all sorts of hardships in order to weaken the body, with the idea that this would strengthen the spirit. And this ascetic practice coming out of the Vedic culture that Shakyamuni was emerging from, this ascetic practice Shakyamuni followed, pursued this ideal, and then realized that it was not going to bring him to his great awakening. It was not going to lead to enlightenment. That the body had to be reconciled with. The body had to be part of this journey, that it could not be set aside. And as we know famously, Shakyamuni accepted some nourishment from a young woman, much to the anger of the 5 ascetics he was practicing with, and he went off and sat under the Bodhi tree at Bodhi Gaya and achieved awakening, realized awakening. So idealism is what Master Suzuki Roshi is talking about in this chapter. And we do need some kind of idealism because, of course, we're aiming towards, in reality we're aiming towards nothing. We're sitting with what is, but in this great paradox of Zen, we set out seeking enlightenment, seeking the wisdom of the sage. But of course, that is only realized by sitting with what is. He speaks about idealism towards the end of the chapter. If an artist becomes too idealistic, he will commit suicide, because between his ideal and his actual ability there is a great gap. Because there is no bridge long enough to go across the gap, he will begin to despair. That is the usual spiritual way. But our spiritual way is not to be so idealistic. In some sense we should be idealistic. At least we should be interested in making bread which tastes and looks good. This is the image he uses earlier on in the chapter of using flour or dough and cooking it. Again, back to cooking, one of Dogen's favorite analogies for the spiritual way. And Suzuki Roshi here is talking about getting dough, getting flour, and the process of turning that flour into bread is the process of awakening, the process of enlightenment. This is the great mystery that we should study, how the dough becomes bread. So this is orientating us in a direction. Okay, that's fine, to be orientating oneself in a direction. But to be hankering after and desiring the end result while engaging in the eternal journey, this is problematic. In some sense, we should be idealistic. At least we should be interested in making bread which tastes and look good. Actual practice is repeated over and over again until you find out how to become bread. There is no secret in our way. Just to practice zazen and put ourselves into the oven is our way. Lovely image there of zazen, the oven, the concentrated heat of sitting. Indeed, I remember once, a number of years ago, I was sitting zazen in Belfast, and I was absolutely perspiring profusely, and it wasn't that warm a day, it was a relatively cold day. I was sitting in the zazen, in the zendo, in the dojo in Belfast, and it wasn't too hot, but I was pouring with perspiration, and I raised the matter with Paul Haller Roshi, who told me just ignore it. Somebody else advised me that this was Kundalini, that this was some kind of energy. So in a way, the oven, these experiences that we do have in zazen from time to time, the image of the oven is pretty apt and accurate. So this idealism, so we sit with what is, we orientate ourselves in the direction of awakening, and then we sit with reality as it exists. This spirit of repetition reminds me of something that Jundo Cohen, one of my old teachers at Tree Leaf Sangha, something that Jundo Cohen said a number of years ago about how we're always looking for toys. And my teacher, Taigu, has mentioned this as well, how often in practice we're looking for the next toy to play with. It can be a ritual expression, it can be a mantra, it can be a sutra. And really the simplicity of shikantaza, to practice it daily in your life, again and again and again, in this spirit of repetition. This is what's key. The long erosion of the cliff by the ocean. This is the process of zazen. It is invisible, incremental, so slow that we give up looking for progress. We merely rest. The progress, we leave the progress or the journey to take care of itself. So this slow erosion, this slow change is the process of zazen. So we have to give up looking for the next big exciting thing in our practice, and just let our practice bed down in great simplicity as a daily practice of zazen. And to do this, we need what Suzuki Roshi is talking about in this chapter, which is the spirit of repetition, just to do it again and again. Our vow is an endless vow, to save all sentient beings, though beings numberless. So, how can we be hankering and desiring a product, an end result, while we walk the path? We must orientate ourselves in the correct direction and simply take one step at a time. And this is only possible with this great spirit of repetition that Suzuki Roshi is talking about today, and by not being so idealistic, not looking for the great perfection that we think we lack and do not have. So we sit in this moment with this body, whatever it is, in a chair, full lotus, half lotus, seiza. We sit with this body as best we can, and we do it again and again and again. So enjoy your sitting, enjoy your practice. Sit every day, and sit with joy, contentment, and acceptance, and openness. Zen and Excitement, page 57. We'll move on to that the next time we take up this project of reading Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Suzuki Roshi. So, have a great day, and thanks for your attention.